All right, folks, good afternoon. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Stan Cook, and I've been working at H&L focusing on COVID-19 response for the tourism industry for the last number of months. And I've been on a lot of webinars with you, and I know a lot of you from my prior life. So I'd like to welcome everyone here today. So this webinar, hopefully you're in the right place. It's called Risky Business, a conversation and discussion around understanding the risks and exposures in the accommodation sector. And we're going to have some practical ideas about reducing risk as the session goes on. So today we're joined by a few people, but our main man is Trevor Pestigee, who's a senior loss prevention consultant at Intact Insurance. Trevor is from Cape Breton, so we can somewhat trust him. Started his insurance career with Intact as a claims adjuster, and he spent the last 18 years in loss prevention. He works with clients to identify risks to their business and develop a plan to control, reduce, and eliminate those risks. He's a strong leader in this area, and his training includes specialized loss prevention programs, including Canadian Risk Management Program, FCIP program, Home Inspection Training Program at Dalhousie, the WETT certification, and he's also, funny enough, a level 1 firefighter. So basically the way we're going to roll this today, we've had a little chat, went over a bit of a dry run yesterday. So for the first 20-25 minutes, maybe up to 30 minutes, Trevor's going to present on a bunch of top risk factors that's facing the accommodation sector mostly, and several loss prevention measures and different techniques that's going to help you reduce them. He's also going to share some of the current trends in Atlantic Canada and also Newfoundland, Labrador with respect to hospitality risks. So after that, we've allotted some time in the session for question and answer. So this is going to be great. I'm really excited about Trevor helping us improve our insurance literacy, as we say. So as I mentioned, for the people that came on a little bit earlier, you might want to put yourself on mute. It might be easier to do that for the purpose of the presentation. Also, guys, if you have a question, you can go into the chat function and type it in. At the end, there'll also be a question answer period where I'll let everyone we'll come back in our screens, turn on our screens. You can raise your hand virtually or physically, put your hand up, and I'll get to those questions. However, what I find sometimes is if as Trevor is talking or anyone's talking and you have a question that might be relevant, if you type into the chat function, I'll read it, and if it's relevant, I think I should stop Trevor right there and now and catch him right in the moment of the act and ask the question. I will. Otherwise, we'll hold off the questions till the end of the show. So, Trevor, thank you very much. I'm going to pass the floor over to you. It's yours to do with as you wish. Thanks.
All right. Thanks very much, Stan. I appreciate that, and I appreciate all your technical expertise as well. These are sometimes challenging to put these things on these days. So,
yeah.
I also want to thank Calagro, Bill and Kevin there for inviting me to do this. I love talking about risk management. Hopefully you enjoy what I have to say, but it's a great opportunity, I think to just do a general review, just a quick thing, right? I mean, I know it's a beautiful day out. I don't want to keep you guys too long there, but I think it's important, right? It's important to do this stuff, and hopefully there's some practical tips that you can get from this. And my contact information is at the end of the presentation, so feel free to reach out, through your insurance agents or to myself directly. That's what we do. That's what we're here for. So. Just quickly about myself, Stan mentioned some details there. It is true, I did grow up in Cape Breton. I'm actually headed there after the end of the workday today to visit some family. I actually worked at Marine Atlantic too when I was going through university, so I got to meet quite a few friends from your side, and I learned a lot about the hospitality risk business from Marine Atlantic, my days back then. So. But as far as my Intact experience, I've been with Intact for about 18 years now. I started off in claims right at a university, and then I moved into loss control shortly after that, and I've been doing that ever since. So when Bill and Kevin asked me to do this presentation, I started thinking back about how many risks I had looked at over the years, hospitality related, and Intact is one of the leaders in the hospitality market. We write a lot of risks. And I would say it's got to be thousands, right? Restaurants, hotels, motels, that kind of thing. So hopefully I have some experience to pass along to you guys. So just in general, I just thought I'd throw this in to kind of give you an idea of what loss prevention is, right? And Intact, the thing I like about Intact is that we've always had we've put a big emphasis on loss prevention, right? We think it's an important part of the insurance industry, right? If we can prevent loss, then everybody's happy, right? It keeps your business going, it keeps us profitable, which is an important thing as well. And so we've always really put an emphasis on that. And right now we have about 72 consultants across Canada that do the same sort of thing that I do. They're spread out between fleet, farm inspections, property casualty, and boiler and equipment. Together we do roughly 20,000 inspections a year. Pre-COVID, that was sort of all on-site inspections, but with COVID, we've had to pivot a little bit, and now we're actually reaching out to a lot of customers over the phone or in video chats, this sort of thing. So I would encourage you to, if you have any questions after the presentations or concerns, reach out to your insurance agent and say, hey, listen, can we have an inspection done? There's no cost to you to have it done, right? It's something that we offer to our customers. So and in general, I think it's a pretty positive process in most cases. And the big thing, that I've always found is, we want to improve risks. We want to lessen the possibility of loss, but it's also about risk identification too, right? And differentiation. So, so you're operating your hotel here, and then you have your neighbor next door who's never did a thing to the building since it was built in 1950, right? And the place is falling apart. You should get a better rate than them, right? And that's what we can do when we're out in the field. We can determine the quality of the the management and and the upgrades to the buildings and that sort of thing, right? So, and a big thing with Intact too as well, we try to be innovative, right? We're looking for new tools to use to try to prevent losses, right? So I have a few examples in the presentation that we'll talk about as we go through. But at the end of the day, it's all about prevention, right? I mean, we want to avoid as many claims as we can. And when I was asked to do this presentation, I try to keep my finger on the pulse of what's going on in the industry and what kind of losses we're having. But I actually spoke with a few of our adjusters and one of our guys over in Newfoundland, actually, just to make sure that I'm on base with what we're actually seeing currently. So some of the examples that I'll talk about should be pretty current. We hear a lot in the news, about cyber, issues now, right? That's a big upcoming thing, right? But it didn't appear that it was, one of the leading causes right now of loss. So we do have lots of information on that. So if it's something, you'd like some more information on, feel free to reach out to any of us and we can provide that. But it's interesting, fire was always the big one, right? It was always the big cause of loss that we had seen in the past, right? And then a few years back, it kind of got eclipsed a bit by water. Water is, we don't think of water as a harmful thing, but water is incredibly damaging if it's allowed to, to free flow in a building, right? But after talking to our adjusters, I said, you know what, let's just keep it basic, right? I mean, if these are the major causes of loss, then let's quickly go over them and then, try to prevent, maybe prevent some of those, right? So we all hear about these losses, right? In hotels, motels, and other businesses. I mean, they're catastrophic, right? And these days with building costs, rising, it's, there's questions sometimes, do you have enough coverage to rebuild and that sort of thing. So I would always encourage you to have that discussion with your insurance agent as well. They're the professionals in that field. But based on my conversation with our adjusters, it's really dated electrical infrastructure, extension cords, power bars, temporary heating equipment. It's those sorts of things that we all know are a hazard, but yet, we sort of walk past them, and I know all of you are very busy. I mean, dealing with all, the repercussions of COVID. So sometimes you don't have the opportunity to kind of take a little walk around the building, right? And that's what we try to do when we're out there doing inspections. But all the photos you'll see in the slideshow here today too are real photos of buildings that I've been in recently. So, you can see here on the left, there's some live wires here. Attics are, if you can get up in your attic, I would encourage you to do so. Maybe not on a day like today, you'll roast to death, but you see some strange things that have been done in attics over the years, right? Like improper connections and things. And then just dated electrical, right? Fuse panels. I mean, obviously we want to make sure the correct size fuses are being used. And so it's relatively easy stuff, but stuff that it's worth, taking a few minutes to kind of walk past and make sure that it's all in order. As I mentioned, so the second leading cause of loss for us right now is water. It's a huge problem for us in apartment buildings, condominium buildings. And I don't see that as a whole lot different than, hotel or motel, right? Or a bed and breakfast for that matter, right? When water escapes from a plumbing fixture or from a piece of fire protection equipment, It damages the drywall, flooring, all the interior finishes, right? So they're generally long claims and quite costly. So these photos are from basically a brand new condominium building just outside Halifax, and they had a fire sprinkler go off, and you can see they have to bring in the equipment, the dryers and things, right? And I think there were I think it was 6 or 7 units that were affected, and the cost of that claim was about $350,000. So it doesn't take long to add up the damages. Um, Liability, it didn't come up as one of the main ones right now, but it's always out there in the background. It's one of those things: slips, trips, falls, all that kind of stuff. We see quite a bit of that. The photos I provided here, just to kind of just to kind of give you an idea of some of the things that we see. So this was a restaurant that I had looked at in Dartmouth a few years back, and it was about 4 o'clock in the afternoon when I did the inspection. And you can see here on the right, there's a little puddle there. You can see it's wet. And what was happening, this was right around, I think it was March, April. And so it would basically freeze, in the evening, and then customers were falling in the night. And what we determined to be the cause was just this little, there was a little leak in the gutter system here. And so basically all the customer had to do was just go up there and put a little bit of sealant on that, and they prevented, who knows how many losses, right? And that's the thing with loss prevention, right? Is that, all these efforts that we make, we never know, if we've prevented losses, right? It's just the losses we see that everyone sort of talks about and that are recorded, right? So I like to think that our efforts do have an effect. And I thought I'd talk to you a little bit about host liquor liability, just because it's an important factor for a lot of hospitality operations, right? And basically what that coverage is it's just to cover you against claims that might arise out of the serving of alcohol. So, be it, any kind of a party, corporate events, charity events, that sort of thing. A lot of this stuff I know you're pretty much all well aware of if you do serve alcohol, but I mean, good things to keep in the back of your mind, right? And from my discussions with customers these days is that alcohol sales are decreasing all over the map. With the new regulations with driving, right, and things, right? So it's not as much of an issue, but it's definitely something that we should keep on the radar, right? And and never be afraid to ask guests for their keys, right? I mean, at the end of the day, most people are pretty responsible these days, and they'll respect, I think, or at least maybe the next morning when they wake up, they'll probably respect you for having done that. So we talked about a couple of the main causes, and when I was putting this together, I was like, okay, so how can we, what can we do quickly? Like what's something easy after COVID, after everybody's been shut down, there's lots of stuff going on in the industry. And, back to my Marine Atlantic days, I remember I had a manager there, Will Pike. I'll never forget the guy. So I call him a manager by walking around. So he was one of those guys that always walked around, in the chief steward's office, a lot of the guys would just sort of hang out in that office, right? And they wouldn't leave there in the whole shift. But this guy, he was always walking around, and it wasn't to pick on people or to see if you're not doing your job, but it was so he knew what was going on. So he knew what was going on that ship on a hospitality level, right? Like, so, and I always respected that. And I thought that was a really neat way to operate, his job, right? So I think it's something, we'll talk about some stuff as we go forward, but maybe after this, as the homework, maybe to take a little walk around your premises, right? Have a look for some of the things that we talked about, talk to the employees, how are things going? Are there any issues you're noticing in the kitchen? Any of the appliances acting up, anything like that, right? And that's the way to prevent those losses, and again, at the end of the day, we never know if we've prevented something, but it never hurts, right? To do these kind of things. And it can be done pretty quick. And I hear all the time when I go out and do inspections on site, after I finish up, I'll talk to the customer and they'll say, you know what, I really appreciate you bringing that up. I mean, I've never taken the time to walk by and have a look at this or to, so it can, I think, make a pretty big difference. So since fire is still our number one cause of loss, I thought I'd throw a couple quick things out. And I know, this stuff is pretty common, and I'm sure that if we saw this, we would see it as an issue. But these are the kind of things. So when you do your little walkabout, any burn marks or scorching on outlets, burning smells, obviously, light fixtures that flicker, fuse panels, again, to check the fuses to make sure they're the proper sizes. So that's a few things that you can kind of do just, with that quick look around. And then, so because fire was the leading cause of losses that we have, I dug a little further into it, and the NFPA, which is kind of the major code that we follow with respect to commercial cooking appliances, protection, cleaning, that kind of stuff, they deem cooking equipment to be the #1 cause of loss, followed by heating, electrical, smoking, which is still surprisingly quite high up there. We lose lots of apartment buildings and units because of smoking, and intentional arson. Again, that's still something that's out there as well, and it's a tough one, but I think we try to keep good relations with our neighbors and things, right, and do the best we can on that. But so just quickly, because I know a few of you out there probably have commercial cooking operations on your site, so you're going to be familiar with a lot of this, but you can see here in the little diagram, there's the fire suppression system, and then there's the exhaust duct system here. And basically those systems are designed to put out a fire on those cooking appliances should one occur. The important thing here is to have it serviced. So if it's a seasonal operation once a year, semi-annual servicing for a seasonal operation is usually fine for that. The duct cleaning is huge. That is one of the biggest things that I see that's not done. It's just one of those things. It's out of sight, it's out of mind, right? There's usually filters in front here, and then in behind is where the grease normally accumulates. So typically, again, the NFPA code requires semi-annual cleaning for the exhaust ducts. But if it's a seasonal operation, then usually you can get away with a seasonal one. And just I don't know how this is going to come out, but so this is what the filters look like. This is what's inside of your exhaust hood. So say up top. So you can see there's little handles on most of these. So you can just take them down yourself, have a look up inside, see what it looks like up in there, and you can actually clean those filters yourselves. So that helps to prevent a huge buildup inside. But again, there's qualified contractors that will come in and actually do that. So, and if you ever have any questions or concerns about contractors, some that are recommended above others, I have no problem, providing that kind of information. So, I actually, because we're always recommending this kind of thing, I actually went out with a cleaning crew a couple of years back. Typically they do it overnight. So I met them at about 10 o'clock at night, and we went into a restaurant in the city here, and you can see this is kind of the setup we had. So you put the plastic there. That's how they kind of direct all of the fluid that comes out, like the grease and stuff, because they were spraying from up top. I'll tell you, it's one of the nastiest things I've ever had to do. It's not a pleasant job. My eyes are still, I'm sure, damaged because of the chemicals they used. They couldn't tell me what they were, so that's a sign that they're not good. But so I understand it is a hazardous job. It's not a pleasant job, but it's something that really should be done. This is just the same night there. So I wanted to stress the importance of these clean out panels, these little silver panels. These are installed in long sections of the ductwork so that you can open them up and get in. You can see he's got the power washer in here. So he's able to get at the ductwork, right? So it's important that the entire length of the ducts be cleaned. That's the key kind of takeaway from that. So this is one I was on not too long ago on the left here. This is what they kind of look like when they're overdue for cleaning, right? And this, the grease buildup will actually deteriorate the roof surface as well, right? So you don't want to leave that on there too long. So, and if you find that you're getting some of that grease around your exhaust duct, they can install, it's kind of like it looks like a children's sandbox. They just build that sand, and that sort of holds that grease in it rather than letting it kind of pour out onto the roof deck. And then this is on the right side here is just, again, most of these fans, they kind of pivot like a 90 degrees so you can get inside and clean them. Just to sort of stress the importance of the cleaning, this was a fire in Boston a number of years ago. There were 2 firefighters killed and I think a couple injured as well. But basically what happens with these is that the hot grease in the ducts, if it's not cleaned over time, the fire starts up inside, and usually there's an upper level to the building or whatever, right? So it burns up in there unnoticed. And then, when the fire department's called or when you notice it, typically they've burnt for quite a bit. And that's what's happened in this case, was that the actual ceiling had come in on the firefighters that were inside the building. So these can be dangerous. And, at the end of the day, I always say this, you know, we can replace a building, but we can't replace lives, right? So at the end of the day, you know, it's all about life safety, right? I mean, you know, so it's a really important thing. And this next slide just sort of shows the recommended cleaning frequency and servicing frequency for commercial appliances. Are there any questions? I don't know, Stan, if you're seeing anything come through.
No, I'm monitoring the chat and there's no question as of yet.
Okay.
I'll jump in if there is anything, Trevor.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, just stop me
Okay.
if as we go through here, because I want this to be a benefit for you, right? So, you know, feel free to jump in anytime.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay. So the next thing I wanted to talk about was electrical hazard, because again, that's sort of one of the leading causes that we see it too, right? Just because it's in the photo here, the CEB brand electrical panel. Electricians that I've talked to locally now, I don't see a whole lot online about this, but they tell me that they tend to have some issues with those. And one of the big things is that when electrical cables, like in the main cables, when they connect to these panels, they're torqued on, right? So there's a big screw kind of holding them on. What they found with these panels specifically is that they tend to heat up, cool down more than others, and that will cause those nuts to kind of loosen up over time, right? So when you have that, and any electrical, you know, equipment for that matter, it's never a bad idea to have them checked out every now and then. You know, if you have an electrician in to install a new piece of equipment or a new lighting fixture or whatever, you know, it's not going to cost that much to have them kind of take a quick little walk through and, you know, and just have a look at some of this equipment. I'm going to talk as we go further about something called infrared thermal inspections. Those are really beneficial too as well for larger occupancies like hotels, motels as well. One of the big things that I'm being told by our claims department and our underwriting is that it's older buildings that we tend to see the issues with, and that makes sense, right? I mean, as a building ages, the electrical infrastructure ages, right? So, you know, if we're adding new electrical equipment, right? If we're, you know, we're adding new motors, new equipment, but we're not actually keeping up with the electrical service, then it just makes sense, right? That service is no longer adequate. So it's really important to make sure that your electrical infrastructure is updated. We don't require, you know, you to do it right away. If it's something that, you know, I mean, if you have knob and tube, you know, wiring, that it might be something different. But in general, we're pretty reasonable, right? And we want to work with customers and their brokers to make them safe as they can be. But at the end of the day, I mean, we want to, you know, we want to protect them and their building. So older electrical infrastructure has been proven to be one of the major causes of loss. And there's the most information that we have on it is apartment buildings, and it's pre-85. So it seems to be those buildings that were built before 1985 that we have the most losses on. And a significant number of those are electrical related. So that would be similar to hospitality risks as well. So these are just some of the things that I see, you know, on a regular basis, right? Extension cords, you know, wires all wrapped up, you know, improper fixtures, connections, missing electrical junction boxes. I mean, these metal covers for these boxes are, you know, are a couple dollars, right? Or, you know, not even, you know, in most cases. So it's just really, really easy stuff, but it's important stuff, right? And again, back to our little walk around, these are the things that you're going to be able to identify as you walk around, you know, obstructed electrical panels. This next set of photos is from a restaurant I had looked at a while back. And this is actually their electrical room, believe it or not. So you can see on the left, there's a transformer somewhere under all that garbage and recyclables. But their electrical panel here is behind a wood shelf, right? So there's no way to open that cabinet door, right? So if there was an emergency, you know, if firefighters had to go into that building and shut off the power, or, you know, the customer or owner had to do it, you know, there's really, it's pretty difficult to get in at that, right? Portable heating appliances, these, there was actually a recall on a number of these box heaters. So these little guys here on the left, a number of them have been recalled. So if you have any of those in any of your buildings, it might be worthwhile to just, on the back of them, they typically have a model and a serial number. If you just Google that, it will tell you if it's one of the ones that was recalled. And basically what would happen is the electrical elements that heat up were deteriorating. and but the fans didn't realize, and they would just kind of keep operating. So they were, in some cases, they were spitting out hot pieces of metal, which is never a good thing, right? And of course that was catching nearby combustibles. So this down here on the left and the bottom here was actually an electric baseboard heater at one point. He's long since outstayed his welcome, and so again, I mean, that's a pretty serious example, but it is still out there. And then this photo on the right, this was a electrical panel in a basement of a restaurant. And the problem we noticed was that grease from the kitchen, which was directly above, had been seeping through the floor and then kind of dripping down onto the electrical equipment. So I made a recommendation that the customer have their electrician investigate and try to solve the problem. The plastic here, I mean, it kind of solves the problem, but it's not like a long-term type thing, right? I mean, so it's a short-term fix, but so more on the electrical hazards. I was just talking to a customer this morning about this one. Dryers. I mean, it's something that we use every day, right? We don't see it as a hazard, but especially for restaurants, right? So if you're laundering rags or cloths that have been used to clean up around the restaurant, if they have any kind of like vegetable or cooking oils on them, they actually can ignite, right? So we've heard cases of when they've actually ignited in the dryer, but most cases it's actually when you take them out and so they're still warm, you fold them up and you stack them, then you leave. So they still will heat in some circumstances, and they can catch fire. And I know we lost a building a number of years ago now over in St. John's due to this type of thing. So again, something to kind of keep in the back of your mind. And I've been hearing this for years, that these bathroom fans, so these would be in hotels, motels, most washrooms in hospitality risk, can be a hazard as well. So whether it be overworking the motors by keeping them on all the time, or I notice with mine at home, it's surprising how quickly dust builds up inside them. So you can usually take this little cover off. There's just two little hangers holding them on. Pull that off, throw the vacuum up inside, and give it a little cleaning is usually all it takes. I mentioned earlier that I'd speak about the thermal inspections. The image here in the purple is a thermal image that was taken, and so you can see the orange section is a hot section, and typically a hot section is a section where there's high resistance. So like I have a thermal gun here that I use when I just go to buildings to kind of give an idea of if there are any issues. But these types of inspections can be extremely beneficial, especially if you have like a larger operation with a lot of electrical equipment. And if it's dated electrical equipment, and like I spoke earlier about the CEB electrical panels and the lugs for the main wires being loosened over time, this will help pick up on that. And just to give you an idea where we use this exclusively is on Intact has always been a big insurer of seafood processing operations. So we use this now to try to prevent losses in those types of operations. So it's been pretty successful too at identifying some pretty significant faults. We're also piloting, just to speak of in seafood mainly, but there's electrical safety systems out now that will actually monitor your equipment. So you install them on the main incoming circuit breaker, and they will tell you via phone, or they'll send an alert to your electrician if there are any issues. And the image I included here, you can see it almost looks like an EKG, right? That you'd see in the hospital. But we want to see flat. Like flat is good. Like flat electrical, it means everything is running properly. When you get this irregular pattern, it could mean that there's a fault down the line, and that's what was the case in this. This was in a building in Yarmouth, Nova Scotia, that we insure. And so this alert came in. They spoke with their electrician. They came in a couple days later, and they solved it. So it was normal again. So there's a lot of technology out there which is pretty beneficial. I wanted to throw this in because I know in my experience as a firefighter over the years, I've gone to a number of fires that have been started by this, but we also had some recent claims as well. We don't see organic planters as a huge issue, right? You think, okay, that's everywhere. We see them everywhere, but what we see is people who, if they're smoking outside the building, right? Because you can't smoke inside typically now. So if people put their butts in there, what happens is that there's not a whole lot of soil in soil anymore. It's usually like ground up wood or other organic materials that are actually combustible. So the image on the right here was a large condominium unit that had caught fire. So one of the residents was up on the outside deck and put a cigarette butt out in the planter, and it actually turned into quite a significant fire. So just something, again, it's small, but I don't know if you notice, that customers are outside, smoking in a particular area. I mean, it might be worthwhile to put a sign up, or, just, maybe have employees have a quick look there every now and then. So that's my fire spiel. Any questions on, and again, we're sort of flying through this. I want to provide you guys with an opportunity for lots of questions too.
Yeah, no, keep going. This is good. And if there
Okay.
is any questions, I'll jump in, and people are saving them for the end, hopefully.
Okay.
And everyone has a fire spiel, Trevor.
That's right. Fires.
So the second leading cause that I mentioned was water damage, right? So these are a couple of thermal images that I actually took on my infrared camera when I was in with some adjusters. I mean, it was such a shame. I mean, this was a brand new building that had just been constructed. I don't think it was even a year old. And they had, I think this one might've been the sprinkler head had come off, right? And so, I mean, we all know what a sprinkler head looks like, right? I mean, I have one, I keep it on my desk here because I'm weird, but there's not much to it, right? Like these little bulbs here can snap pretty easy, right? So I think what happened with this one was there was a power outage. That's what it was, and the resident had hung a trouble light in the shower because they wanted to get a shower, right? They're on municipal water, so they still have water pressure. Anyway, long story short, that putting that in there broke this little glass bulb and caused water to pour out, right? So, again, it's not just the unit that's affected. It typically goes, water finds its way down, right? So it destroys all the drywall, the flooring, and this was the one I think was around 350 to 400,000 in damage, right? So the big thing with that one is not to use them as hangers, right? And I know I know we have a claim actually right now where a guest in a hotel had used a sprinkler head. It was a sidewall one. So typically sprinkler heads are hung from the ceiling, but in some cases they're put on the side of the wall just because it's just the layout of the room that they're in. So it makes a great hanger. I mean, there's no question, but it can be because you can see, right, there's not much holding that water back, right? Plumbing, again, is a huge issue. This is Kitec plumbing. I don't know if that raises or rings a bell to anyone. This actually came out of my neighbor's home. So you may not be able to see it all that well, but we're on wells. So this type of plumbing line, and this was kind of the go-to plumbing line in the early 90s and early 2000s. It was really good because it was flexible, right? Like it had a memory to it. Right, so you can see, like, I have a crinkled up piece here, right? Like you can do whatever you want with it and it will stay. So unlike copper, you don't have to make those kind of connections. But what they found was over time was that water would react with some of the connections, and the connections, they like all companies, right? I mean, they're trying to save money, so they ended up sending the manufacturing process overseas, and they put too much brass in there, right? And the brass. Zinc. It was supposed to be more brass, and the zinc was what was causing some of the issues. There's since been other problems with it, but if you see this bright orange colored plumbing line in your building, it's definitely something you maybe want to have your plumber come in and have a look at it just to make sure. You can get copper fittings for it, and the later versions, like the one I have in my home on the heating system, has the copper fittings, and I have had no issues to date with it. And Intact hasn't even canceled me yet, so that's a good thing. You can see here, this is what it might look like if you're having problems. You can see that little bubbling on the pipe. That shows that it's actually eating its way through the connection there. So just something to kind of keep an eye on. It was used pretty extensively in the Maritime, so there's quite a bit of it out there. Mainly on residential, but some retrofits in commercial as well. Hot water tanks, these are a common cause of loss for us. I typically recommend 8 to 10 years. Some of the tank manufacturers will have a longer warranty, but it really depends on the quality of the water, you know, the usage that it sees, right? Like seasonal operations, if you shut down your water supply every year at the end of the season, you know, your tank's going to last much longer, right? If you drain it, of course, than one that's in use, you know, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, all year. It's always a good idea to write the age on the tank, right? Because, you know, we put it in today and then, you know, 2 years down the road, we have no idea when we put it in, right? So a lot of plumbers will write like on just with a Sharpie on the side of the tank, you know, installed May 25th, 2021. And then you you know, when we do our little homework walk around, right, we'll see, okay, well, the tank was, you know, it's not even a year old. So we're good. You can, for these now, you can, and I have a photo coming up here. It's always a good idea to install these on a tray. You can get these little spill trays, like it's like a plastic tray to put under it. They're like 40 or 50 bucks. And they have a little drain in them, which you can direct to a floor drain if there's one, or connect to the building sewer system. So in the event that the tank leaked, that water is not going to find its way to, you know, all the expensive flooring and things. It's going to find its way to the drain. And something I also recommend a lot too, and again, I apologize if I'm trying to do a show and tell here, but with this camera, but these little water detection devices. So this guy, and you know, I think the message is getting out there. I got to say, when I first started buying these, they were, you know, on the bottom shelf at Home Depot, full of dust, right? And I think I was the only one that was buying them for a while, but they cost about $14. And essentially, what they do is they take a 9-volt battery. You can set them on the floor under any kind of a plumbing device, like a washer or you know, a hot water tank, and they'll sound an alarm if they come into contact with water. So I don't know if you guys, I suspect you can probably hear that louder than you want it to be, but so this little guy is, I call it a headache saver, right? I mean, it's huge for 15 bucks. So, you know, just there are, and I'll mention a few more as we go through, but it's a good.
Trev, are you there? I think we just lost. Oh, wait, no, you're back in now. You just froze, Trevor. No, can't hear you. You've lost your. Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Trevor?
Oh, okay.
Now you're good.
Okay.
Okay, for a second there, I think must be internet. We just lost
Yeah, I can hear you. Yep.
Okay, we just lost the
Okay.
last couple seconds, but go ahead. You're fine. Go ahead.
Another piece of piping hit you in the head.
Okay.
Yeah, something. We just lost your sound for a second, but you're fine.
Well, I can hear my my laptop here is revving up, so it must be doing some kind of
yeah, kick it into
going
something.
through something.
Yeah. Okay, you're good.
Okay,
Carry
just
on.
let me know if I cut out anymore.
Yeah, I'll give you
Okay.
the thumbs down.
Okay, sorry about that. So, okay, so yeah, so these lines, it's a good idea to replace those lines every 5 or 6 years. The older rubber ones tended to dry out, and then of course they'd split over time, right? Because they do have that bend in them, right, where they go to the connection. So these ones are much better. I think on Amazon you can get them for like 25 or 30 bucks, right? So it's a pretty cheap, you know, investment for what it's gonna save you if you do have a loss. This is a little water detection device. You can see it plugs directly into the wall, and there's a little sensor that feeds under the washer. Again, it's going to sound a local alarm. Some of them are tied into a cell phone, so it will send a signal to your cell phone if it goes off. But again, cheap sort of you know, peace of mind equipment. And also, you know, for those of you on the residential side, if you have your insurance with Intact and Cali-Gro, which you should, we offer a discount on those devices. So if you have one of the devices that actually shuts off your water supply, so some of them now they have sensors that will send us an alert to your phone, but they'll also shut off the main incoming water supply if they sense a leak, right? So if you're not home, it's going to take care of it for you, right? So if you do have that on it, I think right now it's about 30% of your water damage portion of your premium. So it's a substantial discount. This is just a sump pump. I put this in because I think it's important. You know, people will put these in and then sort of never think of them again, right? So those of you that have a basement in your building, you may have a sump pump. If you do have any groundwater or any other water in the basement, it's always a good idea, again, back to our walk around, there's a little float on here on the side. You'll see it. It's kind of like a little plastic thing. It's designed to basically float up. So as the water level rises, this little float comes up, and that's what triggers the pump to activate and then pump the water outside. So again, you can just walk by, just grab the float. A lot of times what happens is they seize up over time if they're not used. So it's always a good practice to go by and give them a little pump every now and then, or, you know, pour some water into the pit and see if they operate. And another big thing with the sump pump too is to have a backup. Because, you know, typically when we need these things, it's when there's storms or hurricanes, whatever. And if you don't have another source of power, if you have water coming in and the power shuts off, then this is not going to operate. So these little backup battery systems, I price them at like Home Depot and Rona and places for like between $300 and $400. So, I mean, it's a bit of an investment, but you know, if you have, you know, a water damage claim, I mean, you'll know that that's a pretty small amount. The average water damage claim we have on residential is about $40,000 now. So just kind of gives you an idea of what these things can cost. On the right here, we have what we call a backflow valve. So this is installed just before your sewer line goes out into the city supply or out into, you know, wherever it connects to. And basically what it does is it only allows the fluid to go one way. So if there's a backup, whether it be the city supply or whatever, it's going to shut this little gate here, and it's not going to allow it to kind of come up in. And again, that's a nasty experience when that happens, right? Because it's not clean water that comes up there in most cases. So this is, I think this is interesting technology. This is a company, Water Risk Canada, I think they're called. And they've developed these technologies. So this is like a storefront, right? So you can see this is a equipment that it's designed that it can be taken away, obviously, right? Because you want customers easy access into your building, but it's pre-assembled. So all you have to do in the event that, you know, if there's a hurricane coming or, you know, there's some kind of, you know, nasty weather planned, you can basically just grab these things, fit them into place, and they'll stop any water from kind of getting into your building. It's really, really impressive technology. This one here is actually a car. It's a bag they designed. And it basically zips up over your car. So you basically drive the car over the bag, you zip it up, it's a watertight seal, and you can actually anchor it to the ground. So they've showed us pictures of losses where they've had like apartment building parking garages have flooded, and the actual vehicle will float up, but it's completely fine. Like once the water recedes, they open the bag and then drive the vehicle out, right? So pretty impressive stuff. And this one here on the right is it's an inflatable device. It's kind of like I don't know if you watched The Curse of Oak Island, but like the inflatable cofferdam that they filled up with water. So similar to that, so that if there's water kind of that's rushing toward your building, this is going to protect the building and keep it away. So there's some pretty neat technology out there. We spoke a little bit about water damage from sprinklers and, excuse me, that kind of stuff before. If you do have sprinklers in your facility, it's always a good idea to know where the sprinkler room is, right? So you can shut off the water supply in the event of a false alarm. I've been in buildings before where we walked around the building for an hour and either of us, you know, the building owner or myself, we can't find it. Like we just, you know, that's never a good thing, right? I mean, if water's pouring out of these things for an hour, then that's not a good thing. But there is these guns. It's called a shotgun, and basically what it's designed to do is to actually go up and it will stop the flow of water. Now, the only thing with that is I have to caution, like that water typically comes out at a high pressure. That's the way a sprinkler system is designed, to spread that water at a high pressure. So, you know, you'd want to wear goggles or glasses or something, right? So you don't want to lose an eye. I mean, if that's a possibility, then just run out of the building, right? But it can be done. And these are actually little wood chocks too. So I made a couple of these that I use when I'm out in the field. And basically with these, you can just kind of, if the sprinkler's going off and it's a false alarm and you can get up there safely, you can just sort of wedge them in. And basically all you got to do is just cut off that flow of water, right? So it's so maybe, you know, for if you have a maintenance person, you know, maybe that could be, you know, a piece of kit that they have on the shelf just in the event that they need it. You know, you can tape them together and bring them out really quick. Because, you know, otherwise you're waiting for the fire department to come and shut it off, right? So there's a delay, obviously, in that, and all the while, you know, this water's pouring out. You can obviously get these cages too as well. So I guess, you know, with people who are going to hang items on it, I mean, it just makes it easier for them to hang items. But, you know, if you think that the sprinklers are going to be impacted, so say you're going to, you know, be storing items underneath, the cages are a good idea for that kind of thing. I showed you the this little battery operated sensor earlier. This is just kind of a couple different versions of it. This one on the bottom here, this is one of the ones I mentioned that will automatically shut off the water. And it's so neat. Like, I actually installed one of these in my home just because I'm paranoid about this stuff from doing this line of business. But it's so user friendly. Like, you can actually install this yourself. It just basically sits on top of your main line, and it acts like a hand. So if the sensor tells it that there's a water leak, this device just basically turns that ball valve 90 degrees and just shuts the water off. It works really well, and I can control it from my phone. You know, if I'm away, I can shut the water off or turn it on, that kind of thing. So, and there's tons of different systems out there. But this is, again, you know, especially for residential, really simple system to install. I see it as a huge benefit in like a bed and breakfast type operation. So one that's not huge, right? And you only have a limited number of plumbing fixtures. And typically those buildings, I mean, are so, you know, the history in them, right? I mean, you know, we can put the building back, but we can't do, you know, we can't do it the way it was, right? We can't get that history back into the building, the woodworking and all that sort of stuff, right? So I see this as a benefit for that in protecting that type of risk. We mentioned liability earlier, so I thought I'd you know, finish off with this. I mean, this again goes back to our walk around the building, right? Like, you know, you're going to notice if there's stairs that are deteriorated right over time, and these are real kind of claims that we see, right? Like people slipping and tripping and falling and stuff, and you know, damaged concrete, right? In the Maritimes, I mean, we can't keep concrete, right? I mean, it's going to move up and down all over the place, but it just so you do your due diligence, right? I mean, if there's a big hole and it's near a walkway, I mean, you can buy those dry patches now where you put in, or a bit of concrete, whatever. And a lot of the contractors now, so if you have a sidewalk outside of your building that's on your property, they can actually grind it down. So instead of putting like a patch, because the patches don't tend to last, and they actually create more of a hazard in some cases, they'll grind it down and they'll make the both sections level, right? So there's some options there. This on the liability side, so this was outside of a restaurant, just outside the city here. I mean, this is normal, right? This is what we see in winter in Maritimes, right? Usually a lot more snow than this actually, but what had happened was, you can see on the right here, there's a little screw here that's got a wall anchor in it. That little section there, a customer of the business caught their foot on that and tripped, and then sort of fell into their vehicle. And so that was the whole nature of the claim, right? So it doesn't have to be anything huge or, you know, a big hole in the pavement. I mean, it can be pretty minor stuff. You can't prevent all of this. I mean, you know, it's impossible, but things like having security cameras are huge. I was looking the other day for one for my home. There's a camera manufacturer, Blink, and you know, for under $100 you can get a good, reliable security camera that will send a signal to your phone. It's high quality images. Even like Costco, places like that have the more commercial type cameras with 4, 5, 6 cameras and a DVR box for recording. All that stuff is huge. In the event that there is a claim, having a record, it helps our claims adjusters so much. If it's legit, I mean, that's what we're here for. We're here to pay claims, but if we can prevent them and keep everyone's rates down by doing that, then that's what we're going to do, right? Because if we just sort of flat out pay every claim that comes in of this sort, you know, if we know they're fraudulent, then it's just kind of an invitation to those people who are doing that to kind of keep doing it, right? So we want to actively prevent these types of claims. So that's pretty much everything I had.
Okay. There's a question there. I'm just going to ask a quick question before I throw it. I think
sure.
it was someone from the Georgetown Inn, I believe it was. The question I had, so looking at these hazards, they're obviously physical hazards. So if I have a B&B and I've done a walk around as you, or walk about, whatever the proper term is, and I've looked at these hazards, and I have my head around it, we're doing a pretty good job, and I document that. So I've got the fire, the water, all those major hazards looked at. How do I communicate that, or who do I communicate that to my broker? Like if I'm looking at saying, you mentioned like the guy next to me is not doing much with his property, but
Yeah.
I've done a lot. So how do
Yeah.
I communicate that so I can get insurance that's affordable, that's reasonable,
Yeah.
to make sure I'm properly covered? Like what's the next step after I've gone to these steps?
Yeah, that's a good question.
And I don't even know if that's up to you or maybe
Well,
Kevin or Bill, who are the also insurance experts on, might want to tackle that too. So I'm going to throw it at you first, Trevor.
sure. Yeah, and then I'll maybe deflect to Kevin and Bill. But basically, what I would do, it never hurts to let your insurer know that. You know all those positive things that you've done, right? So especially with renovations. So if you put a new roof on, or if you update the electrical equipment, the plumbing, that's not cheap stuff to do, right? So you may as well get the benefit of having us know of it. And then when the underwriters set those rates, then they take that into account, right? So
Okay.
it might not be a set discount on the actual premium, but it should keep it from going up, right? At the very least. And I know it's important because when I go in to look in our system, updates are huge. Like that's one of the biggest things the underwriters want to know these days,
Or
right?
updates?
So
Is that what you said? Updates?
yeah, updates. So
Updates, okay.
updates to the electrical, the plumbing, and probably the best way to do it is through your insurance agent. So typically you'd meet with them once a year and say, hey, listen, these are the changes, and when they bring the policy in, those are good times to just discuss that. I mean, if you've got photos, that's awesome.
Okay.
They're great because the underwriters can have an actual visual of what's there. But even just the details. So electrical was updated 2021. What you did, they've changed the fuse panels off the circuit breakers. That's big, and I think going forward, that's going to be even more of an issue because a lot of underwriters and companies, for that matter, are tightening up, right? Because they're seeing a lot of losses and they're looking for ways to try and prevent them, right?
Sure. Okay. Bill, you're off mute there. You going to jump in on that, or is that just my
Yeah,
accent?
actually, I'll just go along with what Trevor's saying, and he nailed it down. The thing is being proactive, and it may not, you may not see the reflection in a distinct discount in your insurance, but by doing these preemptive walk around or walkabouts, whatever you want to call them, by showing that you're proactive in terms of risk control and risk management, it puts you in a more enviable position when it comes to the underwriters looking at the risk. And it's more along the lines of being able to continue to get, to get more favorable rates than facing issues that are going to prevent you to get favorable rates going forward.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's.
I'll just mention one other thing too. When we do inspections too, I mean, it's not just always the bad things that we mentioned. I mean, I often compliment a customer on something that they do well, right? Because I think that's only fair, right? I mean, if they're doing something well, and I'll detail that in my report as well. So, and it's not just the physical part. It's also the management, right? So if you've got a customer who, and you can tell pretty quick when you meet with someone, right, whether or not they care about their business or they care about loss prevention. And I always mention that in the reports as well, right, for the underwriters, because it's a big thing for them to know, right, that this person is a they care about their business, right? They've put a lot of investment into it, over the last number of years doing upgrades and things. So it's important. It does make a difference.
Okay, I got a question here from Georgetown Inn, which is a kind of historic B&B, I don't know, I'd call it Midtown St. John's. And it says, will there be a discussion on risks due to COVID surrounding the increases in premiums for this year? And it says, it's just a conversation on physical loss prevention, which is obviously you've whacked through the physical risks. So yeah, I guess discussion on risk due to COVID surrounding the increases in premiums for this year. Any of you guys want to just throw out on the table for that? Some practical or tactical opportunities there for these guys?
Actually, I'll answer that.
Thanks, Bill.
In more along the lines of, to be perfectly honest with you, it's almost a coincidence that COVID came into play at the same time that the market got extremely volatile. COVID, unfortunately, the rates that you're seeing and the increase in rates that you're seeing and the decrease in capacity that we're seeing was more along the lines of insurance driven rather than COVID driven. And Trevor can jump in this anytime. In the last 18 to 24, maybe even up as many as 36 months, the market, like I said, has become volatile. And that's a result of increased claims, catastrophic claims, like your major weather incidents, your water damage, your wildfires, major floods. That's created an increase in losses in the insurance industry. And then what that does then, and insurance companies get their revenue, a lot of their revenue from investment income.
Mm-hmm.
And investments have gone way down. Interest rates have decreased dramatically. So the insurance companies are losing. I'm not saying they're losing money because they're not, but their capital, the amount of capital is reduced. And so what that does, and there's certain players get out of certain classes of business. And that's all that's happened. That's happened all within the last 24 months. And just so happened that coincided directly with COVID, but that was happening before COVID came into play. So honestly, the results that the increase that you're seeing in rating and the decreases in the acceptability of risks is only a small part as a result of COVID. We're seeing, and to go back to what the discussion we're having here, the best risk you can put forward, the best risk we as brokers here at Cala Grow can put forward, or the best risk that you as insureds can put forward, puts you in a better position. I've been doing this for almost 30 years. And, the last 2 or 3 years, I've seen cases where because of some of the things that have been seen as a result of inspections, insurance companies are not increasing rates. It's not a case of how much am I going to pay, is if I'm going to be able to get insurance.
And that's something we're hearing, Bill.
Yeah, and that's honestly, Stan, I've been doing this for almost 30 years. I've never seen that except for the last 2 years.
Okay.
We've got clients who do not have insurance coverage, not because they couldn't afford to pay for it, but just because they couldn't get it. So, did COVID play a factor? Yes, it did, because service levels are down, expenses have increased. So that it does play a factor, but unfortunately, that just piggybacked onto where the insurance market was heading anyway.
So basically, it's really a perfect storm that's almost created this hard market that we're in right now. If I'm hearing you correctly.
I like to call it an imperfect storm.
There you go. Better again. That's better again. So I think Larry's.
Exactly what happened.
Yeah, I think Larry's butting up to his mic there. Go ahead, Larry. I'll have a question after.
To support what Trevor and Bill are saying, we had our insurance person from Cala Grow tell us back December of 2019, because there were underwriters going away from the market, and not just Newfoundland but Canada, and hospitality in general, that our rates were going to start. You're going to see. We were warned that we were going to start to see rates that were going to be doubling, tripling, whatever the case. And just another comment, as far as the walkarounds of the stuff are concerned, in reality, you should be doing that 3 or 4 times a year anyway, from a workers' compensation perspective. Identify any type of risks, because it's not only for your consumer, but for your internal consumer, your coworkers. You protect them, and don't be afraid to reply or respond to them. I'm like, I've had some of my committees report things, and it's like, I'm sorry, guys, that isn't a health and safety issue. But then there's other things they pointed out that we didn't see,
right?
That we responded to within a week, because it's something that we identified that was extremely important.
Yeah.
And such an easy fix. Look at some of the pictures that Trevor showed. I mean, like the electrical box. It came with a cover. Where did it go?
Yeah.
Right? That sort of stuff. So that was shabby workmanship. So following up on the people that you had coming in, be it plumbers, electricians, people cleaning your hoods, I mean, making sure that they are legitimate, that they have the proper workers' compensation and stuff. And this is all due diligence that will help you with your insurance company, with your workers' compensation,
right?
And these sort of things, right? So I just wanted to make those comments.
Thanks, Larry. They're valuable comments, because you're living it, and it's very valuable.
Actually, just to piggyback onto what Larry just said, Larry, you nailed it. And when you get people coming in doing work in your businesses, and this is not a bad thing to ask. This is not, you're not being too forward. Ask them to confirm with them that they have a general liability policy in force. Because if you hire, an individual, and say they're in doing some plumbing work, and they do their job, and while they're in there, they crack a pipe or something that you don't notice till they leave. And if that floods through the house, that floods through the building, if they don't have any general liability insurance, your insurer has no recourse. All that responsibility will fall squarely on your shoulders. Whereas if they do have a general liability policy, and you ask them to have you as named as an additional insured on their policy when they're doing work for you, at least then there's some recourse against the third party in the event that they cause loss or damage to your premises.
Yeah, and Bill, you're right, because it falls true for a workers' compensation claim as well if they don't have the proper workers' compensation protection.
Yeah.
We won't allow anybody in our building to do any work unless they prove insurance and workers' compensation.
Right on. Smart.
Excellent.
That's smart.
Mhm.
Guys, as I'm cognizant of the time, we are 60 minutes from when we kind of opened our doors. So if you can, the folks out there who have their camera off, if you're willing to flick your camera back on for a second, because I know someone here would like to have a picture of everyone smiling and saying, yes, we were here, we participated. Instead of seeing the names, we can see your beautiful faces. And I know Susie is the expert on the camera. So, as I kind of, unless there's another question, we're going to kind of clue up the next, minute. So if someone wants to raise their hand virtually or otherwise, we'll clue up. So as I'm kind of waiting to see if anyone has their hand up. No, Trevor and actually Bill, thanks guys. Solid. Obviously this has increased our knowledge of insurance and the risks and all that. Trevor had his contact information up at the end there. So if there's any other issues, and I'm sure Bill at Calagro would be glad just someone as a resource you could gladly reach out to and talk to anytime. Okay, cool. So guys, thanks very much for this. This is a great session. If you're out there, for the folks that are on the phone on the Zoom call, I see your names all the time. You're always the people jumping in and trying to improve your skills and knowledge. Reach out to someone who we might not see in the Zoom call very much, guys, because a lot of the industry out there needs to be on these sessions and learn and pick up these great tips and tricks and listen to people like Larry who are, in their sector, who can give you also some really practical ideas and tactical solutions. So thanks very much, guys. We'll have this recording put up hopefully by tomorrow. It takes a little while to process all that. But otherwise, have a great day and all the best. Thanks, Trevor.
Great.
So much.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate you.
Cheers,
doing
guys.
this. Thank you.
Thanks,
Cheers.
Trev.
See you guys. Well done.
Have a good weekend, guys.